So Chandler, let's talk about, look, if you can recap for us kind of what the regulatory landscape, and a lot has been happening the last year and a half on metal finishing and PFOS. Kind of give us a recap of what's going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, the biggest news that we've seen come out in just the last month or so is not only the EPA finalizing their drinking water limitations for a number of PFAS compounds, but we've also seen PFOS and PFOA now get listed as hazardous substances
Right.
under CIRCLA. So, those are really the two big announcements that have really kind of brought PFAS back into the center stage, if you will, not only just within our industry, but also in just the mainstream media at large. And, this is coming kind of not too far off the heels of some pretty significant settlements with the
Mm.
manufacturers, DuPont, and even more notably, 3M. That'll pump billions of dollars into treatment and intermediation efforts for PFAS substances. So there's definitely a lot going on that's kind of led us up to this point. But probably what's even more interesting for the surface finishing space specifically is what's expected to come in the relatively near future. If you
Right.
look at the EPA's roadmap for PFAS, they specifically have that in 2024, this year, they want to propose effluent limit guidelines for industrial dischargers in the metal finishing and electroplating categories specifically. So, of course, this will just be the proposed limitation. It won't be the finalized limitation, so it won't be enforceable. But usually that comes, fairly shortly after, and this should give us a really good idea of what the EPA will be expecting of the industry when it comes to removing PFAS from our industrial discharges. And it's interesting because up to this point, it has been a relatively nuanced landscape when it comes to PFAS. Some states
Right.
have taken it very seriously, even developed water quality standards that give them an avenue to be able to enforce effluent limitations, even on industrial discharges. Some are kind of just now ramping up their testing and monitoring efforts to understand what the PFAS landscape in their state looks like. And in other states, we've seen very little activity up to this point. But of course, a nationwide effluent limitation guideline would certainly normalize that playing field, and we would see ubiquitous regulations across the entire country. So I think very notable, regulations to come for the industry.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Like you said, some states it's been years, couple years that they've been talking about this and doing study. Some states have done nothing. And like I said, now that the US EPA is going to kind of put a broader blanket over top of it, it affects everyone, right? I mean, it's going to
Absolutely,
be front and center with that, right? Yeah. Uh,
definitely.
let's talk about the technology, because this is a question I get from a lot of finishers who'll say, "What's out there to help me?" I know there are a lot of increase in people coming out saying they've got some technology that'll help the facilities deal with this, but kind of give us a broad view of what is it that's out there for shops to even think about.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that because these regulations have been anticipated for some period of time, a lot of technologies have been in development for a number of years, and a lot of them are reaching commercial phase at
Mm-hmm.
this point. And so I do feel like we actually are in a pretty good position when it comes to the different types of technologies that are out there to manage PFAS. Of course, there's still a significant runway for development, but for if and when these regulations do come around, there are some technologies available that do prove fairly effective, it seems. If I were to kind of take all the technologies out there and really kind of briefly recap them,
Mm-hmm.
you have your kind of concentration technologies where you're not actually destroying the PFAS, but you're basically taking it out of the bulk water and you're concentrating it either onto a substrate or into a much smaller percentage of water than the bulk water that's coming through the wastewater system. So that would be things like the activated carbon and the ion exchange resins, which we have already seen a lot of deployed in commercial implementations. And then this also is things like foam fractionation, electrostatic concentration, these types of things where you're taking that PFAS and you're moving it into a much, much smaller
Mm-hmm.
concentration of water or substrate for further disposal. And then you have your destruction technology. So this is actually breaking that carbon to fluorine bond, breaking it down into mineral components. And this will be things like supercritical water oxidation, electrochemical oxidation, UV technologies, hydrothermal alkaline treatment, some pretty sophisticated, technologies that are now coming out to actually destroy that PFAS and effectively eliminate it from the waste stream. And
Right.
sometimes it's a combination of. Sometimes you concentrate it first, and then you ultimately destroy it. Of course, there are a lot of different technologies out there, and I'm sure that they all kind of have some niches or some best fits in terms of applications and where they're most suitable. I'm sure significant variables moving forward will be things like how much water that you're generating in your facility, how much PFAS is in there, what types of PFAS that you have at your facility, what discharge limit that you need to achieve, what the background matrix looks like for that wastewater, even things like what type of power that you have in your plant, electricity
Mm.
costs in your area, the amount of space that you have in your
Right.
facility,
Yeah.
and even things like how many skilled operators or labor that you have available to be able to operate the equipment. I think all of these things will be factors when it comes to ultimately selecting technology. But like I said, the good news is there's a broad array of those technologies out there. So in most situations, something should be a good fit.
Right. Gotcha. So I guess the misnomer is, it being a forever chemical. There are some destruction factors that can help with this. Correct. It's something that, and it seems like this technology keeps getting introduced daily. I mean, people are doing a lot of studies and research, but it can be removed, right? I mean, it can be taken out of the system.
It seems like that's the case. Yeah, it
Right.
definitely seems like there are a lot of emerging technologies where that is the case, and we do have the ability to actually destroy these chemicals, and I'm sure that it will continue to go up. I actually took a look at the exhibitor list for WEFTech in 2023 last year. 24 exhibitors listed
Mm.
PFAS destruction technologies on the app. So, and I'm sure that will only continue to increase for 2024 and beyond.
Right. The big question, I mean, to kind of wrap this up a bit is what should finishers be doing? What should metal platers be doing with this? I know, over 2,000 of them got a survey from the EPA asking some data. And I know that's kind of a question I get is what should I be doing? What can I do? I would think the first thing is to talk to their advisor, their rep, if it's MacDermid Envio, right, is to talk to someone. But what steps do you think that they should be taking?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it depends on where you're at right now. For those who haven't done that kind of thorough investigation to see if PFAS is present in the facility, if so, how much, what types, where is it coming from? Are there some easy ways to be able to eliminate some of those sources of PFAS? That, of course, is going to be the first step because that's going to allow you to really understand what the landscape looks like in your particular situation. And for those that have that already, I think it's exactly like you said. For those who have a wastewater treatment supplier or who have wastewater treatment experts to reach out to them, start the conversation.
Right,
The
sooner
good,
than later, right? Sooner than
exactly,
later.
right?
Yeah.
Because the good news is we still have a lot of time. But
Hmm.
what's coming seems fairly inevitable at this point. So let's take advantage of that time and let's start to consider what types of technologies are out there. Start doing that research. Start going to trade shows and conferences. I mentioned WEFTech, which certainly we're seeing a lot more, I guess, discussion around PFAS technologies there. But even surfing coming up in just a month's time. I looked at the list of technical presentations there. A number of them are on PFAS. The discussions are everywhere. So I think you can very easily also go out there and start doing your own research, start getting familiar with the various technologies, and just starting to get a feel for how you might go about it. When that time comes around, I think the more prepared that all of us are for this transition, the easier, the better, the faster that transition is ultimately going to go. So that's absolutely my recommendation at this point is get an understanding of your situation and then just try to continue to understand and stay on top of not only the regulations, but also the technologies that are out there that are available to us.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I had a finisher tell me one time when I was talking about wastewater. He said, it's not a problem until it's a problem, right? And until it rears up. But the other thing I say is that they don't need to know everything. They just need to know somebody who does. And like I said, a supplier like MacDermid and Via, who can is on top of this, right? You guys are reading a lot about this, and you've seen it at other various shops that you've been in and what's seeing some of the best practices that people are doing. So I guess that would be the first step, is to have a real solid conversation with your supplier to see what they are seeing at other facilities that are working, and maybe start at that step one, maybe with that, I would think.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it, Chandler.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time. Really enjoyed the
Mhm.
opportunity.
Mhm.